Is Todd and Jasper from the Flight Plan podcast. G'day, boys.
G'day, Grant. Thanks for
Yes.
having us.
Hello, Grant. Now, Grant, do you read this off a script, or are you so used to it that you do it off memory?
Straight upstairs, mate.
Oh, in the noggin.
Well done.
Straight
That's it.
upstairs. I could recite it underwater.
Yeah, I can recite underwater as well after listening to it every week
Yep.
for about 5 years.
Thank you for joining us tonight, boys. We love listening to you guys and your take on the Bombers and everything to do with same. So we're looking forward to having a good chat tonight. We'll briefly cover the Freo game, and then we're going to get into some mid-season discussions. Scotty.
Yeah, good to be on, guys, and yeah, welcome Jasper, welcome Todd. Obviously, very big friends of the show, and we had an awesome time doing the media day at Essendon. We had two desks next to each other, and had Perkins on one side and and Caddies on the other, and we're having a ball talking to the players. So yeah, so look, we wanted to do we're going to have a quick sort of wrap up of the recent Freo game, and then we wanted to do a bit of a mid-season review, even though our bye's quite late. But we kind of wanted to talk how Essendon's going so far, get sort of the accumulated minds. What are we thinking? No doubt an injury is going to be a theme for the show a little bit, but I guess starting off, Fremantle. Probably a predicted loss, if we're being honest, with the way things are over in Perth. Starting with you, Todd, what was your first sort of takeaway from the loss?
Would Patrick Voss be playing for Essendon playing this well? I don't think so. That's probably my only takeaway because there wasn't much happening in that match. I was not a big fan. Not a lot of fun. But it's an interesting discussion on Paddy Voss. I really wanted to get your thoughts, everyone here, about whether or not he'd fit into our best 23 because the knock on him was conversion, and he's obviously worked on it at Freo, but still not great at it. So he offers so much in terms of ground level ball and aggression, but just to kicking for goals is really letting him down. And for us, I think we couldn't afford to bring in someone like that who can't make scoreboard impact when it matters most.
Look, boy, I reckon he's close enough. Like, from what I heard from the commentators, Royce Hart was for running around in the forward line for Freo. The man was more overhyped than you can shake two sticks at. He bustled through a few dudes. He flexed some abductor muscles. He's got a great ass, I'll give him that. But apart from that, he did 2/5 of bugger all. He kicked a goal and had the most overhyped discussion about a bloke. Like, I mean, look, the kid's got some talent. He's all manner of big bustling Barry, but apart from that, there's a reason why we got rid of him. And you hit the nail right on the head, Todd. He's all effort. He's all enthusiasm. He's 20 years old or whatever he is. And I was running around bustling people over at 20 years. He hasn't got the skill to be a starting forward line player in the Essendon Footy Club. So that's why he ain't there.
Now, look, my personal thought is I watched Vossi a heck of a lot, and I was quite happy with how he was progressing at Essendon. I thought he had a way to go, and actually my concern was his marking hands, and it still is the same. Because it was funny, we actually put at some stages prior on him, and they weren't concerned about his overhead stuff. He averages like 3 marks a game, and he's just not, for me, a potent threat in the air. And he's got to do his work once the ball hits the ground a lot of the times. So I don't think, especially the way we deliver the ball, that helps. Because and it's not being recency biased, but I'm more happy with how I saw Archer May in our structure, him next to Caddy. He's physical to tackle, just as I would say, with the same sort of mindset. But in the air, he's much more of a threat to me. And so I would rather, I don't think Patrick Voss under Brad Scott is actually named in our best 22 if we have most players available. What do you think, Jazz?
Yeah, I think he's exactly what we thought he could be after 2 years on the list. There's no tricks to his game. He competes really hard in the air, but he doesn't take those marks like you alluded to, Scooter, and he gets most of his work done at ground level, and that's all well and good if you're going to be a third tall in a forward line that's next to Josh Tracy, who's one of the best key forwards in the game, but it's not going to work in our forward line, and I understand why we let go of him at the time, and he's not showing anything to prove that was a mistake.
No, and look, the other part of this is, and I'm genuine saying this, I love watching him play. I'm thrilled he's got a chance at Freo because that's a different scenario, the Freo forward setup, and it's working okay for them. I'm thrilled for him. Like I think most people, I talk to some people at Essendon, they're absolutely thrilled that he's gone and making a career of himself. I just don't think he fits where we were at. And that's just it. So look, on the Freo game, Jasper, what was your kind of takeaway? Obviously, the concern for me was probably the midfield numbers when you're seeing the inside 50s getting smashed and the clearances. How are you seeing the debate, I'll say, around the use of Martin and Merritt and then the mix that's currently in there?
Well, what I will say about the mids first up, Scooter, is that we've become very easy to play against in there. And we saw it on the weekend in terms of the contested numbers for Fremantle. They're a good midfield outfit. And obviously Vigo Vizentini going up against Luke Jackson, it was always going to be difficult. But it's been something over the last 4 to 6 weeks where opposition midfielders are getting a hell of a lot of the ball, and a lot of it's uncontested because we're not pressuring, tackling, running both ways. That, I think, is a real concern because that's more system-based and effort-based than the actual talent in there. And we don't have many injuries through our midfield right now. It's a quirk of our injury list that they're all in the ruck department, all our tools down in defence. For me, when you talk about Nick Martin and especially Zach Merritt, if you move your best player out of the midfield due to a tag, then the tag has already done his job. That's my biggest takeaway from what we've seen with Zach Merritt over the last couple weeks. He's obviously playing off half back a little bit. He's playing deep forward at times. Brad Scott's thrown him around and put other bodies through the midfield, which is all well and good. But for it to come off the back of getting attention from a guy who's probably the 22nd guy picked at Fremantle in Corey Wagner, I think that means that Fremantle's absolutely won that duel, and it probably led to a little bit of the scoreline at the end of the game when you just know that Zach Merritt hasn't got involved at all in the second half.
Okay, Grantos playing the devil's advocate. Is the reason why he's not playing in there because of a tag, or is it because what I've heard sort of media people say, Martin and Merritt aren't walking through there because they need some leadership and or some class, talent in other areas of the field, i.e. down back. And we need Merritt to sort of, I don't know, and even forward or something if Merritt goes forward. Is it genuinely because he's been tagged and they want him somewhere else, or are we just seeking to put better players? And because technically we've got Caldwell and assorted people that could be playing through that midfield and do. Is it because of the tag or because we're trying to move him to some place where he can be dangerous where we need him?
It's a tough one. Look, you probably know my personal thoughts on this, Grant.
I do.
I probably said at the start of the year that, I don't think Nick Martin should get into the midfield and should never leave the midfield. I think Zach Merritt's one of the best midfielders in the game. So I have my thoughts. I understand the dilemma of Parrish coming in, Setters finding his niche in the midfield mix, and then how the coach is going to deal with it. The tricky part with what I found is that Setters has been really good with the big-bodied opposite run with roll, and the thing for me was Fremantle didn't have that obvious role for him. So my problem with Setterfield is if he doesn't have that designated run with roll, as a pure midfielder, I don't think he probably cuts it, if I'm being blunt. I think he's good, but I think that's where he got found out a bit, that because he didn't have that headspace, Cripps, that kind of Bont, that kind of run with roll where he can really focus and he does it so well. It's just like, hey, just be a mid I thought that's where the mix all got. We just struggled. We just the roles of each mid just didn't have a mix. That was just my thought.
Yeah, he went to Sarong at a lot of centre bounces and a lot of contests throughout the game. But Sarong just bounced off him straight away. He wasn't that big lumbering bloke outside of the stoppages that was easier to run around with. And you saw that with the touches Sarong got in the end. He kicked 2 goals in the first half. He had 35 disposals and was best on ground outside of Luke Jackson. That is not a role that you want Will Setterfield to be playing. And for mine, he's leaving a couple blokes, younger blokes with more upside out of the midfield if you're playing him without a tagging role in there.
Without a tagging role, that's the key, and that's probably why I don't mind him keeping him for depth on the list, because there's some roles that you go, well, we can bring him in and he can do some big roles. But does he? If all intents and purposes, it's a hard one to say he's in our best mix when you just want, if we're just going to have mids playing mid, like it's so it's a really interesting conversation. I guess on the other side, probably Todd, I'll go to you. Did you find it frustrating that you felt there was 3 forwards totally in form and 34 inside 50s, just the way we move the ball and just, I don't know about you, but I was pulling my hair out going, how are you not seeing what these guys are doing in the air one-on-one contests? Like, can we just move it, please?
Well, I'm wearing a hat right now, so you can't tell the bald spots I've got from ripping out my hair too. It is absolutely ridiculous. But I was really surprised I didn't hear either of you boys and Grant as well to bring up Sammy Durham. I mean, I think he's been a monumental loss, and he's been playing under duress. And that
Fair
injury,
point.
yeah, that the suspension probably came at a great time. I think I saw it on your scooter. Twitter scooter that it's probably self-preservation that he's been suspended, so he has to take that 2 weeks off. But we've seen him labour through and really, 27 touches against Carlton. He not only does he do the hard stuff, but he can prop up, take a huge mark, kick goals. He's really become that complete two-way midfielder that we were threatening to have with Dunkley coming across from the Dogs, who
true.
ultimately went to Brisbane. But it's been an issue, hasn't it? The whole, almost always under Brad Scott's tenure is the delivery inside 50. And, Kako's got to get there eventually, but we don't really have, the Nick Watson, Jack Ginnivan types. And Jasper's been preaching on this, and I agree with him. They need to learn how to milk free kicks, and it's just not happening right now. It seems like ball hits the deck and other teams just rush out. I know we've had 2 great teams. Geelong, obviously, one of the premiership contenders, and Freo really should be pushing top 4, but we've really got exposed for our lack of really quality smalls up forward. And yeah, if we're not getting a huge mark where he's come 5 meters deep from the pack from Caddy or Peter Wright, just plucking one out of thin air, it's a bit of a tough scenario on the Essendon forward line right now.
No, I agree. And gee, that was almost my favorite Nate Caddy game. He was doing things that he must have done 5 or 6 things that were just like, oh wow, like the 2 passes. I know the top, maybe that one, I'm not sure if that would be total coach's instruction, but it was just some of the marks. Oh, gee, I thought he was so on, and that was, I think, part of my frustration is like Archer Mays had 14 disposals and 6 marks and 2 goals, but we had 34 inside 50s. And you're like, well, that performance I thought was better than maybe even the stats kind of showed, because he just didn't have the opportunities as much to what normal forwards would have with you have your 55, 60 inside 50s. So there's a lot of, it's been a theme for the year where, and we'll go into it more, but there's just these little, even Vigo, there's just a little ray of sunshines and just little moments of the game. And you're like, oh, well, that's, it's Archer May's 20 years old. And Vigo's 19-year-old ruckman. And like, gee, Roberts off half back. And gee, Caddy, how good does he look today? It's been that year where it's like you're losing, you're frustrated, but then 2 days later you're thinking about the game and you're like, gee, I'm still liking what I'm seeing in different areas of the game. What do you think, Jazz?
Yeah, I reckon we've transitioned into our second talking point here, Scooter, because that is exactly what I've liked about our season so far. And it's the area of the Bombers in 2025 that makes you smile and makes you look forward to the games each week. I'll quickly run through these youngsters who have had 10 games or less entering the season, entering 2025, who I think are clearly going to be key pillars of this club, in 5 years' time, over the next few years as well.
Take a deep breath, Jasper, because there's a few of them.
Well, these are just the ones that I think will be best 22 stalwarts, and then will hopefully be our best players within the next few years as well. Nate Caddy, Archie Roberts, who may well win the Rising Star this year, Zach Reed, Isaac Kako, Lamont Lual, Angus Clark, Zach Johnson, and Archie May, I think can all be best 22 going forward. And none of them had even half a season of AFL football under their belt coming into this season. That is seriously exciting.
Yeah. It's so true. And out of those names, if you told me 3 weeks ago, I honestly would have slapped you, Jasper, if you mentioned Luau.
I know.
And I think that he's the one that surprised me the most in a weird way, because it's like his trigger's gone off in senior footy, because he wasn't having this VFL form. I'll be a hand on heart.
Yep.
I was surprised he got picked. I told Grant, I went, I have no idea why he's in this team. I was watching the VFL and
like there was going to be issues, but he's been sort of looking good when he's moved forward.
Yeah, he's been solid, and then obviously with Vigo's game as well, he's a bit more, maybe still 2 or 3 years, but there's some really interesting stuff. So that's obviously one factor of where the team's at. Any other kind of positives you're seeing? I'm going to do a cheesy one because it sounds funny, because we've had 3 bad losses, but I felt this last year and I'm still going to go with it. I still feel like in this group, there's an undercurrent, and maybe it's coming from some of the younger players, of resilience, that I know they're going to have some bad losses, but I still feel like we've won a lot of games we should win, and a lot of those games have been pretty much tied at 3/4 time, and we've won kind of like 85% of them.
Well, Scooter, in games decided by 2 goals or less this year, we are 4-1.
Yeah.
That doesn't usually happen with Don's sides. That's been really impressive, and a key change this year, that we're actually buckling down and we're in it for the close ones, and we get the job done.
No, it's just something that I can see. There's some competitors coming through, and obviously the captain is a big part of that as well, and Scott's driving his own standards. Go for it, Todd.
So before we started recording, I just gave you guys a heads up that I wouldn't say what it was, but we're kind of alluding to it now. Is this the ultimate season outside of a final win or a grand final appearance / win that Brad Scott could have hoped for? I think he's got a year where there's 0 expectations. He's blooded a whole bunch of kids. He's found key pillars in Zach Reed and Nate Caddy that can be, the next Fletcher and Lloyd combination for a decade. And then unearthing guys like you mentioned, Archie Roberts, Jasper spot on, he could be the rising star. And just these kids that come in, the temperament and just the willingness to learn and get better is just so great. And I don't know, just the whole injuries has given Brad Scott this kind of a mulligan year where he can say, all right, let's try and instill some confidence. Let's try a few things. And there's no repercussions, because he can ultimately point to the injury list and say, okay, well, I didn't have 12 key players, a lot of them best 22. And I just think it's the ultimate development year for Brad Scott. There's 0 expectations, 0 pressure, and missing the finals is completely forgiven. So I think it's probably, outside of winning a final or contending for a flag, the ultimate sort of season that Brad Scott could have hoped for. Just what are your thoughts first off that, Scooter?
Yeah, look, I agree. And to even more extended to that, Matt Rosa. Matt Rosa has the clearest vision of his list at the end of this year that you could ever, a list manager could ever hope for, because maybe by the end you might have just 3 players that haven't played senior footy, and one, those 3, who knows what's going to happen with the guys like Nick Cox if they have to retire. We don't know, but yeah, I agree. There's definitely one thing I think I've been thinking about lately is, what's the mindset of this upcoming preseason going to be? Because normally we've played more the 33, 34 kind of guys, maybe 35, but not the 42, 43 maybe by the end of it. And there's going to be a lot of guys who've had the Archie Roberts for, 4 to 6 games last year, and you see what Archie's come on Are they going to go into this preseason going, well, now I know I kind of belong, and now I'm going to hit this preseason hard? So I think it has a flow-on effect with everything. I think it gives Brad Scott a really good look. I think it gives him. We've heard with his presser that he's basically said, "Hey, some of these kids aren't coming out, by the way," and that will be very interesting coming up in the next 2 or 3 games with team selection, because how does that translate with 6 or 7 guys maybe available? So it'll be but I totally get what you're saying, Todd. I think Brad Scott would see it as in his mind, he wouldn't say it, publicly, that this has actually been a big positive, because I've been able to have line coaches myself teach the way I want to play, teach them a lot of things, and hopefully that group, through experience and through gelling together, ends up becoming a team in a couple of years.
Yeah, and that suspension year that we had, we were unearthed Tip and Woody and James Kelly from Geelong as a key player. I think it mirrors that so well, that there's the opportunity with zero expectations for these guys. And Jasper nailed it in the draft last year about trading out that top 10 pick that ultimately went to Xavier Lindsay for Melbourne, who looks like a great player. But Jasper continually harped on the fact that this is a deep draft, and Matt Rosa just went down that rabbit hole with that strategy and has paid off dividends. I mean, it's very early to make calls on some of these guys, but guys like Angus Clark, he just seems like he belongs at AFL level, doesn't he? He kicked 3 goals on debut, then he went back against Geelong, didn't start well, but then came into the game and took some great intercept marks. I mean, guys like that.
Zach Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, fans from other teams would be optimistic about getting one of those guys. Then we've got at least 4 guys where you can legitimately say with a strong preseason next year, they're in the best 23. And that's awesome, I reckon.
No, I agree. Grantis, when you consider the half-year point, what's your initial thoughts about, I know we're on the positive streak and we're going to go on the things that we need to improve, but is there anything that comes to your mind that you go, that's like a positive, or that's something that you've seen that you go, hey, I'm liking this?
It's very obvious that you guys are 100% correct. You would have to be the biggest pessimist in the world to look at this season and say, well, it's another waste of a season. We've had 2 massive fadeaways in the last 2 years, and this is just another season where we're not going to be playing finals again. Woe is us, and woe is us. Now, there'll be people listening to this in the car who are now screaming at their radio saying, Grant, that's what you've said. But bad luck, I reserve the right to change my mind. No, it is another season without playing finals. However, the worst pessimist in the world couldn't sort of come to the position and ignore the fact that you're exactly right, Todd. We've had, and you too, Scotty, we've had the ability, and Matt Rose has had the ability to see practically all of them, to see practically everyone. With that as the base, my 3 things that I've found that are really good for the season so far is, I want to name a bloke that just is in my starting 5, my first 5 players picked, who's just quietly accumulating. And what is this, his second season in Archie Roberts? I'm not quite sure people realise, I'm sure the league doesn't, but I mean, Essendon fans know what we've got. But this is a kid that was pick Jasper.
I want to say 55.
59?
Yeah, like way down the list, right? I think Lloydie had a word to somebody.
Yeah, we traded in to get him, didn't we?
Yeah, right, to pick him up. Now, an absolute gem at 50 odd. The kid can play, and he's played what, 20 games, less than 20 games, and we're almost rising star. So that's a massive bonus for us, that he's just quietly going about his job and accumulating what we need him to do. The other one for mine is, and I know I'm sort of concentrating on individual players, but Zach Johnson. I know, I mean, Jasper, we've heard you talk about him. Scotty, you've spoken about him. He wasn't playing in, I think it's Metro that he was playing for. He wasn't playing in their midfield because they had all manner of stars in there. So they were trying him across halfback. We've picked up another one. I reckon we've picked up another Archie Roberts there. And we've had so many players of late, kids, Perkins, Hobbs, Nick Cox, and co, who really haven't taken a step, and that we're kind of looking in the distance and there's no steps in the distance for them that we can see. Whereas you look at the likes of a Zach Johnson and Archie Roberts, and they're standing in front of a stairwell. They look brilliant for the limited time they've had. And again, that base of knowledge of we had to play the kids this year. It's not something that Scott would have wanted to do, but we've found two really good players, I reckon, there that are absolutely best 22 in the next 2 to 3 years, without a shadow of a doubt. So that's two of mine. And then also I want to call out the forward thinking of, it would have been Rosa, and the draft hand that we have in the next draft. It was a big call, what we did and how we negotiated the Melbourne deal and all that sort of stuff. We've got an incredibly strong hand in the next draft to do whatever the hell it is we want to do. We can go after big fish. We can draft kids. We can do whatever the hell we want to do. You don't often get that. Like, you get gifted pick 9 and that sort of stuff, and it gives you pick 8 and pick 9, and it all looks good. But we dead set earned this next draft period, right? So I know it's not this season, but it's this time at the end of this season. We're going to be looking at either 4 incredible kids or 1 real big fish and a couple of little ones as well. So if you concentrate on the negatives, you'll jump off the Balti. If you think about the positives and just enjoy watching the boys running around, then there are a lot of positives for this season.
Thank you, mate.
I think it's sorry, Scooter. I think it's very difficult to make an argument that this is in any way, shape, or form a failed season without referencing the final streak. I think if you look at the current regime under Brad Scott and Matt Rosa, it is so clear that this is the right trajectory for the football club in the medium to long term. We just watched, I'm sure you would have watched it, Scooter, OKC win a chip from absolutely nothing a few years ago, and that is under, Dagnall and Sam Presti, the GM, having the free reign to actually have a long-term vision for a club, and in the US terms, a franchise that hasn't had any success in the past in terms of chips. And for Essendon, it's now 25 years since that premiership. And we finally got a regime in place that is looking at the long term and trying to build a team that can't just compete in the next year or two, but can compete in the next 5 to 10 years for multiple premierships.
No, well said. I hate to go on that kind of positive note. What are some of the areas that you've seen so far? Because I think it has to balance it out. Because our Blitz and Twitter audience, they're going to go, "Oh, you didn't talk about what needs to improve." What areas are you thinking needs to improve? I'll start. There's just some obvious ones, and they're not kind of. And look, I felt that this was the case when a lot of our senior players were playing, and it comes down to ball movement, and it comes, and I still feel the system is very much a work in progress. So I felt that after round 5, because it felt like, I don't know about you, but some of those wins even we were getting, it was an ugly game. Like it was like after the game, you're like, oh, it wasn't the best of games though, was it? And you never really felt we hit our straps. Maybe the Melbourne game was probably the best of the lot at that kind of period. But I felt more comfortable in the Lions than the Blues game in a weird way, going, oh, now we're getting somewhere. But there's no doubt there's still a lot of coaching to be had. And that's not to put a torch on Brad Scott, but there's no doubt, with line coaches and senior coach, there's still a lot to play out for me, and I address that too with some senior guys that I see who are 27 and 28, and I go, you're still doing that, and you're still doing that on the field, and so I still feel like there's some on-field disciplines and there's structures, and there's just a lot. There's still a lot for me that is a few years in place that has to get right.
Have you got any names there, Scooter?
Well, well, I think I've mentioned at the start there was some things Redmond did early on. I went, you got to stop that.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Obviously, the game a little bit with Langers went to his head a bit. I think there's some confidence issue more with him, not so much coaching, but he was running into the same space as Wright a lot of the times. I go, come on, guys, you're senior guys. You're running to the same space. You're not, you're not kind of being unselfish, and you need to spread out. Sometimes there has to be a sacrifice here then for someone else to get the footy, and so look, it's just those sort of things. It's just. But our ball movement, I find from midfield to forward line, and maybe you could say half back, but we all know McGrath struggles with kicking the footy. We all know those kind of things. He's great at defense, fantastic stopper. But yeah, so to me, I still feel like there's a way to go, and some of it. Some of it actually is just recruitment and class as well. I'll be honest. The two highest scores from turnovers in a game this year is two Essendon games. We still need some class, and I still think there's a few listings that need to be adjusted and some mixes. So there's a whole. I mean, I'm probably rolling off about 3 or 4 different things, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Injuries being another one. So. But I'll let someone else. Todd, what are your thoughts?
Oh, well, I'm with Jasper on the OKC comparison, and I think we need to go down that road of being ruthless with them because Russell Westbrook, anyone who knows basketball knows his heart and soul of that team, and they moved him on and they moved on Paul George, who was also a big piece of their potential to push with Carmelo Anthony that didn't work out, and I think we've got to be, and we're getting a lot better at it, but we've got to identify that these guys aren't going to be the future. And from 25 years onwards, and then make a ruthless call on them. I mean, right now, it's not a bad call because I still like what Redmond's offering. But in hindsight, will we give him that huge contract that he got instead of going to Adelaide? I don't think we do. I think we probably would let him go there, and that's another decision we've got this year with potentially Sammy Draper maybe getting first round compensation. If Jasper and I have spoken about this. If that's a top 5 pick for Essendon and it generates pick 6, I mean, you almost have to let him walk unless you're being a little bit detrimental to the team. I think for the longest time, Essendon's been so much on individuals and individual talks. And I love James Herb, he's spectre over the club the entire time. And, Zach Merritt and the talk about how he's evolved as a leader. He's more ruthless before that. But, I really do think that the club is on the right track. And Ben Jacobs is one guy we haven't mentioned. I'll shout out to him. His development at the club has been absolutely awesome. And we're so lucky to have him there. But yeah, Jasper and Scooty, spot on. I think there's just some hard calls that need to be made this off-season around some of those senior players. And one guy you didn't mention, but I think won't be at Essendon next year is Dylan Shield. I've always held out optimism that he'll come in and be an amazing player, but it just hasn't clicked for him in the last 2 years. And I think it's time that he explores his options elsewhere. And I don't think anyone at Essendon's going to be too upset with that, considering his output hasn't been great. But yeah, it's an interesting opportunity, and the OKC comparison, loved it from Jasper, and it's just spot on. We just got to be more ruthless and really attack the development side of things for the Dons.
Grant, I haven't heard your take on Darcy Parish enough, but I've been interested to hear off the back of what Todd said there, and we've been chatting about. What would you do with him going forward?
Yeah, interesting. I'm a Darcy Parish fan. I really am. He I keep using this analogy. I don't know whether or not it's valid or not. Maybe you boys can let me know. I heard Doomy say one day, it's the old adage, you get the ball 30 odd times, you get the ball 40 times. It's 40 times that the opposition don't have the ball. Or do you get the ball 30 times, you don't do awful much with it, it's not particularly impactful to the game. Therefore, was the 30 really worth your time and effort, right? I think Darcy's had one exceptional season. We played him like we tend to do, out of position early in his career and during the BS saga. I think that kind of experience and that type of ability to get the hands on the ball is something that we still need. Because apart from Sammy Durham as an in and under, and if we're not going to play Merritt in there as an in and under, Jai Caldwell needs a hand. Now, but Scotty and I had this conversation, and he does make a very good point, is that the touches that he's getting at the moment are not impactful. I've even got to admit that, right? They're not really impacting the game. So I'd absolutely keep him in the team. I think he's in our best midfield, but I would have Caldwell, Durham, and Merritt, if I'm honest, in as the first three, and then I would start to transition Darcy Paris to that backup next set of three that used to have Dylan Shield in it and that sort of stuff. That next three to come through, he's going to be handy to relieve the likes of a Merritt, to relieve the likes of a Caldwell. I just don't think moving forward we're going to see a potential Brownlow season out of Darcy again. But he does bring experience. He does bring the ability to get the ball. And we don't have an option, a viable option to replace that. Hobbs isn't going to get the ball.
That's the issue. Darcy's like a really complex discussion because it's also hard with his just being 3 games back after a lot of interruptions, because Darcy Parish in his All-Australian year still was a lot better than what we've even seen this last 3 games. So I don't know how much upside he goes from here, because the one thing that why the club is interested in Rao is ground ball gets and clearances and that sort of stuff, and which we're not that great on. The other part though with Parish is the mix. Is actually there's a bigger conversation around the mix, and for me, that's my concern with more Darcy is I felt like it was very I feel like once you have that kind of mix without Martin or Merritt, it's very same. But Darcy's going to get you the clearances. And the argument will be, which will no doubt Jasper and Todd, is people obviously will be in our ear right now in their cars and their phones and saying, well, there's a kid that had 13 clearances and 40 possessions on the weekend, and what do you think of that? And that's the hard argument, because you're actually getting a similar player, maybe with more speed, but you're still getting the same same ball off the boot, to be frank. And, Shield and Sardis had 71 disposals between them. They had 6 inside 50s. And that's part of, I'm trying to wrap my head around. I feel like even with Hobbs, I go, gee, there's a real discussion for Rosa to have with this whole, what the midfielders we have at the moment, because Hobbs and Sardis and Parish and maybe Cobble to an extent go, gee, there's a lot of similar types. And do we have to change that mix? I'll be blunt. Do 1 or 2 have to be traded to have guys incoming that just helps your mix that a Collingwood has, that, that has different kinds of guys, left foot, right foot, tall, small, fast, just that better mix.
I think clearly you need to be looking at the trade table for a mixture of those guys. And it comes back to what you started out with, Scooter, here in terms of our pause off the season. I think transitionally, both ways, we are one of the worst teams in the competition. And we have been for a while now, because we don't have, one, great foot skills across the ground, but we also don't have great defensive transition runners. And that starts from your midfielders and your half forwards getting back and clogging up space so your defenders aren't defending one-on-one. Yeah. And right now, I think you look at the midfield mix, and none of them have the speed to pressure and tackle outside of congestion. And I think a few of them don't have the effort to be getting back in transition as well as other midfielders across the competition. And the way that football's going over the last 5 years and going forward, it's going to get more pronounced, is the best runners, the best ball users are going to be the most in-demand players on the trade table, and you're not going to be able to trade for them without giving up a ransom. And right now, we've got a midfield mix when you include Sardis, when you include Hobbs into the Darcy Parish, Will Setterfield, Jai Caldwell types, that aren't good ball users and aren't good defensive runners either.
Jasper, on the scenario that, which is very unlikely, on the scenario that, I'll give you some names, that Harley Reid,
yes, please.
Zach Butters,
Yes, please.
Sam Walsh.
Yeah, okay.
We know Raoul's gone, but on that kind of scenario, who does fit what you think we need if we were going to give a massive load of draft picks to?
Oh, Zach Butters is so clearly number one on
Yeah.
my whiteboard. If you're talking about a guy who adds to our contested ball game, which obviously isn't good either, but he is one of the premier contested ball winners, clearance winners in the competition. But then when the ball gets on the outside, that's when he's at his most damaging as well. Transition running, ball use, foot skills, the deft touch that he has with his ball use to teammates, and unlocking the kind of waves of running that Port Adelaide gets sometimes when he has the ball in hand. That is what this team needs, and has needed for a long time. We haven't had a type of player like him for forever, it feels like, and hopefully he's gettable on the trade table this year. I think it's more likely next year.
Yeah.
But we should be right in the hunt for that type of player. And Harley Reid, I would give up 2 first-round picks for as well. That upside of what he can become. It's not necessarily what he is right now. But Zach Butters, absolutely, I'd give up 3 first-rounders.
And Bergman?
Yeah, I think that bigger body in contested situations, and a guy that can use his foot skills going forward as well. I'm not exactly sure if he's going to make it as a midfielder in his career, but I know that you have to at least try it and give him a season to do it. I think he is so similar to Jordan Dawson at Sydney, where he was playing off half back or a wing, and he had these shutdown roles, and he eventually got some exposure to centre bounces, and Sydney went, oh, we might have a player here. And then he tried to leave, and he went to Adelaide eventually. And within a year, he was captain of that football club and one of the best midfielders in the game. It can happen quickly for these guys when they hit their early 20s. Bergman's in that right time frame, and it sounds like he's going to be back in Melbourne this year.
Just quickly, I just realized we're only a point through the agenda, 43 minutes in. A player that will go around the table. Player that has pleasantly surprised you the most at Essendon this year?
Ilya Grigic. No, that's easy.
Don't say Steinbeck. Yeah.
Hey, let me go first. I want to
right.
shout out. I want to shout out Zach Johnson, because I got his evaluation wrong as a draft expert, I guess. And that's because we didn't necessarily see him through the midfield at the top level, but we also I've watched probably 7, 8 of his Northern Knights games where I came away with notes that were more negative than positive, to be perfectly honest. He was the captain of that team, and he had outstanding games where he had 30, 35 touches off halfback through the midfield and that stuff. And I thought that was all well and good, but he faded out of games at crucial moments. I thought he was a defensive liability when he did play off half-back, and he lacked physicality. And I didn't know if his game was going to translate to this level. I was so wrong. And I think through pre-season, I figured pretty quickly that some of that stuff is so peripheral to the player that he can be, and his silky ball use, his ability to take the game on and pick out targets with composure is so impressive and so vital for the modern day game that I think I need to rejig how I rank prospects going forward based on how Zach Johnson is acclimated to the next level.
I'll go next, and just because I want to just comment on, I thought, there's some games you go, there's a player that is fairly quiet. Zach Johnson had 9 disposals. He did 3 defensive things in that game that made me realize, yep, you are going to be a 200 game player, because I hadn't seen that defensive side of you yet since being at Essendon in the VFL, and that was one of my back of my, when you have back of your mind, you're like, oh, is he going to fit defensively in this side? Like, because I keep seeing him having not much body contact. Just in that Freo game, he just did 3 things that I went, oh, that's much, much better. Really, got slammed for it. Obviously was a little bit hurt, but it was just the little things. I go, oh, that's all I need to see. Great. If that's coming into your game now, that physicality and going into a back of a pack and that sort of stuff, now your projection goes much higher than I realize. I'm going to go, and I probably should go Lowell, but I'm not, because I'm going to be
not
horrible.
100% convinced yet, are you?
I'm the verdict's still out with me. I'm sorry, because I'm going to go in a weird way. He's only played 1 game, Vincentini. The reason I say that is because I've watched every VFL game. His first 5 or 6 VFL games, even this year, and I only played just forward. I thought he was out of it. I was like, you're just not in this game. Something a light bulb went off when the two ruckmen went down, and I don't know what happened, but I can't explain to you enough how different from just one game from a previous week to then the next 7 games as the main ruckman in the VFL, and playing against some of those guys with pretty good quality or AFL listed ruckman, and then to see him then play in Fremantle at age 19 as a ruckman, do what he did just before halftime, that big tackle, have 24 pressure acts, have 15 disposals. I just didn't see that part of him like in the VFL. And it's maybe in my mind I'm 2 years down the track, but I just thought, that's like, I'm really, really happy with how you've progressed with responsibility. It just told me a little bit about him. As soon as he had the responsibility and he realized Draper and Brian are out with with Achilles and a knee for the year, it's like a light bulb went off, and he grew up. It's like he was suddenly just had to mature very quickly, and what's coming out of that, I think, is going to be a long-term really good prospect. How about you, Todd?
Right now, you three have to go have a cold shower because you haven't had a chance yet, Grant. You can turn it around, but not to mention Zach Reed here is absolutely terrible for you guys. Absolutely terrible. And I'll put my hand
but
up
my
here,
premise is I thought he was brilliant.
Yeah, you're coming from a low base, Toddy.
Well, I don't know how you guys can get a first year player in there when it's improvement. You guys cheating borderline here. But yes, I come from a very, very, very long way back. Jasper points it out correctly. After round one against Hawthorn, I was like, he got through the game and he's healthier, but wow. And then he turned around in the next month or two and had an absolutely stellar campaign.
Yeah.
Incrementally grew. And then I think the standout game obviously was against Sydney. 27 disposals and 8 internet possessions, 85% by foot. Just like exactly what we needed. And
it was brilliant.
The hamstring awareness is not great, but the signs are there, and he signed on for 3 years. So the club's obviously pretty confident now that he may have gotten his body right. And 2026, we could see the best of this kid. And there's no doubt if he gets a full season, he'll be contesting for All Australia next year. I will put my name next to that. I think this kid is the next generation of defenders going forward, alongside Nat Caddy. And how lucky are we to have both of those? I mean, it's just an awesome thing that we've got right now. And yeah, I can't be more happy to say that I was wrong about Zach Reed than I was after round one. But Grant, you got to close us off here, mate. Who have you got?
Really good question. Yeah, it could. Sorry.
You was about to say you were so glowing of Archie Roberts. It may be Archie Roberts.
I think that's fair too.
It's got to be close to Archie just for the sheer consistency, because he was playing well when Reedy was playing well, and he's just been. But again, like Todd, you're right. Scotty and I were looking at each other down the Zoom lens when Reedy was playing his first few games, going, no. Like that looked real bad, and like big, tall, not good at all. But if we move on from Archie, because I've pumped him up fairly enough, I'd agree with Zach Reed, because I'm now sort of putting Reed, and get your guys' feedback on it as well. My favourite backline player, in fact, my favourite player at the club, just from his sheer skill and influence when he's up and about, is Ridley. His definitely. Marking, his steadiness down there, his brilliant kick. He was just a great general down there for us, and still is, and hopefully he comes back and plays the next 3 seasons without a single problem. But I look at Reedy now and as almost as important, because we know what he's capable of now. He's almost as important and almost has sort of surpassed Ridley in my expectations, because we just cannot keep Rids on the park. So, Toddy, I'll back you up on Reedy. I think he's shown enough against some big, strong dudes to be a bit Inspector Gadget-like and get the long arms in and around. He's left foot, right foot. He's like a rare talent, and we've had enough single figure draft picks of late really not show what they're very, very capable of. And Reedy's not one of them. You can see it from a million miles away. He's just going to get better and better.
Well put, mate. Well put. Completely.
Now, Yeah, on the other side, player that you're hoping that you thought would progress further but hasn't, or disappointed that it hasn't progressed further. We may all have the same player, but
Can we say hope as well? Like, can we hoped that was going to progress?
we hoped it was going to progress, and they just haven't come on as much as we would have liked. Jasper.
I'm gonna. There's probably another one that I'll leave. I'm gonna say Ben Hobbs because he's been given the opportunity in the 22 to perform. He's probably another one where you look at Adrian Dodoro's later years and you go, that just was not the pick right there. And he slid through the draft for a couple of reasons, mostly because of the ball use. But I think the major one, and I think he landed at 13 with us. But the major one was that he was beating up on smaller bodies at the Coates Talent League level, but he struggled to make it count for the AFL Academy or for Vic Country, where it got, against those elite level prospects through the midfield as an inside midfielder. He wasn't dominant and he wasn't that impressive. But at Coates Talent League level, where he's going up against the 70 kilo blokes in the midfield, he was really physically dominant, and we just have not seen anything to make you really think that he's going to be a midfielder at AFL level. And right now, he's playing in a position where he looks like a liability. And if you've listened to a single episode of the Flight Plan, you'll know that I do not believe that Ben Hobbs is a half forward. And right now, he's taking the spot of an Archer Day Wicks or something like that should be playing in that position.
So should he be playing in the midfield? Like,
But
should we be playing him there?
But Grant, is he good enough to play in the midfield? I know we
How
haven't
does
seen.
one know? He
I know we
hasn't
haven't
played there.
Yeah, and neither is Elijah Sardis to a degree, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But in my opinion, Ben Hobbs's foot skills aren't good enough for AFL level.
And I think that's the entire argument. Like, I can sit again, play devil's advocate and go, we haven't played him in the position that we drafted him to play in, the position with the position that we drafted him to play. We haven't done that, but you can see from his game around the grounds and stuff, gets the ball, he's sort of AFL standard footballer, that's fine, but his disposal out of the midfield is something if we put him in the midfield, is something we just don't need. Like, it's
and his issue for me is how much he gets caught. It's actually the speed of when he gets the ball to the ball hitting a boot or making a decision. I find he gets tackled a heck of a lot because he just doesn't have the immediate speed of ball use as well. Like, where actually Sardis does have at least that side of his game. Like, he can get out of handball pretty quick if he wants to. But yeah, I kind of tend to agree. So, Todd, where are your thoughts at?
Oh, just before I move on to that, Ben Hobbs at 13. Geez, it hurts when you know that we really wanted Isaiah Wanganeen Miller and he went 2 picks earlier. Oh, that one hurts. And then to look on and see Lee Lear, Darcy Wilmot, Tom Brown from Richmond, Jacob Van Ruin, Kyle Lohman, who we tried to target before the premiership. Jesus, you can only pick who's there, but there's a reason, as Jasper mentioned, that he slid. And geez, I hope he can turn his career around. But right now, it's just not it. But I'm sure we don't. No surprise who I pick here. It's Archie Perkins. Every single season we go into it, and I'm trying to convince Jasper to go on board with me that an All-Australian season's on the offing, but it's just not happening. And it's even last year we had the hope of his 3-goal game against Hawthorn where he's best on, thinking, wow, this kid can be something. But he just seems bereft of confidence, which is kind of a bit polar opposite to what we saw in the preseason. Jasper, I suppose you can point to this after I've just mentioned him, but I thought he seemed confident, really strong in what he was doing, approaching the preseason and in towards the season proper. But I just haven't seen it from Archie. He's even right now fringe best 23 because he's really not making impact. Even when he comes on as a sub, he's looked really bereft of confidence, and it's just not the guy that we really thought he could be on draft night, which is one of those skillful half forward / midfielders. I know Jasper doesn't think he'll be a mid, but guy that can get forward and kick goals. He's just not showing it right now. And the team when he was drafted, he should not be on the fringe of the team. He should be really cementing his spot as a top 10 player, and he's just not doing that right now.
Look, I think you're going to have a lot of amens coming down the microphones, and it's just a shame because he actually is a damaging player with ball in hand, and when he's up and about, when he's confident,
good things happen.
A lot of times
good things happen.
He gets a lot of score involvements or can score a goal himself, but it's just I'm going to mention one that might be controversial, and it's probably a guy that I've got frustrated with as far as he's fit in the team, but I still struggle with Harrison Jones. I don't know he's fit into the team, and I certainly don't think he's a wingman, and I think we've overplayed that hand way too much. But problem is, I don't know if I see him as a half forward, especially now. So I'll be honest, he was my surprise extension.
That was the question I had for you, mate. Is what you thought of that signature? Because it just seemed to come out of nowhere, didn't it?
I just thought, moment of honesty, I thought him and Edwards was way too early. I wanted him to see what the year played out with mid-season draft, and that I really want Edwards to work out. But that's a fringe player with a 12-month injury. That's often, not till 18 months until you really get that confidence back. I just thought we jumped the gun. And
definitely, yeah.
I wanted to see what we could do at the mid-season draft. And now that, Archer May's in, I'm like, well, no, I know myself where I want to put my games into. But yeah, so Harrison, I think Harrison's effort is definitely improved in his attitude, and I can definitely see that. I can see that side of his game really helping, but I think just he doesn't, for me, read the game overly well. He just doesn't find the footy, especially when he plays the wing role. And I know what Scott's trying to think of with Jones on the wing. It's just not playing out that way. And on a senior level, I have to say Jay Gresham has to pull his thing out, because he's had mid-30s goal games, 20 possessions games. I know people say, oh, gee, Jay Graham's just useless. No, he wasn't at one stage. Like, he actually had fairly good years in a row. And we're just getting nothing. We're absolutely getting nothing. And we're getting this 50 minutes of just being out of a game and then having this 10-minute cameo where he scores maybe 1 or 2 goals and he games, we'll just roll him on next week because of that. And I'm kind of getting over it. That's just my bluntness. Grantis.
Mate, look, I agree. Jade hasn't sort of been the answer for us consistently. My one is a bloke that I really wish could have worked, because he's a weirdly shaped arrangement, and I think there's a spot for him, but no one wants to play him there, and that's Nick Cox. I don't mind him. He's got weird skills. He's a big, tall, freaky looking unit, and honestly, when he had that half a good season in season 1, I think it was, and he was running up and down a wing and he was sort of slicing through the middle and doing stuff like that, I thought that was a real point of difference for him. You add that to his tall frame, left foot, right foot. I'm spewing that he hasn't worked out. Now, if it's got anything to do with the concussions and or his state physically, then all of this goes out the window, and we hope the very best for the man. However, is it more of a case that you wish he came on more than now? Because the fact is he's had the concussion symptom all year, so it's hard for him to say I couldn't actually do anything about it. True, but
is it more the disappointment that you haven't been able to see him actually get the games into?
Yes, and that's correct, right? And also the fact that he was playing as a key position back last season or something like that. We saw him playing down back when we were on the Gold Coast watching a game. I'm not sure why anybody would think that string of spaghetti that is him could play as a halfback. He's a big, long, running, loping sort of runner with the ball. Now, if he's not that, he's not anything else in the team, in my opinion. So that's why I just think we've been screaming for wings. We had one that was almost all Australian. Now he's playing everywhere else, which is fine. I think they've finally realised that he's a forward of the ball kind of player. But I don't know. I just think Nick Cox is wildly talented. He's a point of difference. I would love to have seen him go on. Having said that, if he's got concussion issues, then all the very best to you, mate. But yeah, that's mine, who I would have loved to have seen really progress as a player.
Fair enough. Next on the agenda, now that it's obviously it's probably only been a month or three since the mid-season draft, how are you finding the mid-season picks going. It's actually hard not to say that anything else but positive. But I'll start with you, Jazz.
Yeah, really exciting. I think that Matt Rosa taking Archie May was a brilliant decision and one that Collingwood will be pretty upset about, which makes it all the better. He looks like he could be the foil to Nate Caddy for a long time, and considering he's only 20 years old, he was on the draft radar 2 years ago, didn't get a gig, went to Richmond VFL. He sought his opportunity out west with Subiaco, and his first 6 weeks of the season was so good that Collingwood gave him a guarantee before the draft, and he pulled out of that game on the weekend and expected to go to the Pies, but he ended up across town at the Dons. And I think what we saw against Fremantle on the weekend, on Thursday night, was really exciting. And I think that he could be that really physical presence down the line to impact contests.
Hey, Scotty, just to keep in mind, my bedtime's 8:30.
So yeah, I look, I totally agree. I thought Blackiston had his best game by far.
Definitely.
I thought to keep Jai Mist basically to zero. I thought he was, he's definitely getting a lot of intercepts, VFL and AFL. So
I can see exactly what Matt Rosa saw as a ruckman. You watch his vision as a ruck, and he's bouncing all over the place, and he's got some acceleration out of a stoppage, and he kind of body lines the ball and runs with it for a little bit. We've seen that as a key defender for the first time in his life, but he's taken to it really well because he's got this attack on the football, and he body lines and he straight lines the ball really well. He just doesn't know what to do with it when he gets it, which is completely fine because he is a ruckman.
Yeah, because
he seems to use it really well. Like he spots the ball in the air and reads it so well. I think you're right, Jasper. That's a masterstroke putting him back, and it got a bit of Adam Saab when he first came to the club, didn't it? He gets the ball in hand, runs around, does his own thing, and then eventually works it out. But all the guys that have come in, May and Blackiston in particular, at either end have made great impact, and hopefully they have a long career in red and black because they have both really put their best foot forward, and you couldn't complain about any of them right now.
No, sorry, you go, Grant.
That's why I was mentioning sort of our draft hand next year. I think we've got Zach Johnson, Roberts, and Blackiston looks all right. And geez, if Lawal keeps going the way he's going, then he kind of looks all right. I think we've got some talent, like some actual talent, and combine that with what we do next year, be it more talent or be it big talent, then it looks really good. Like just the way we're running this at the moment, we're not getting the wins. We're not sort of really playing the game the way we want to, but we're starting to look really good. Jasper.
What I will say is I'm a little bit concerned that Tom Edwards extension may cost Lockie Blackiston or Liam McMahon a spot on the list next year. I think it'll be a real crunch towards the end of the year.
Yeah, well, the most fascinating end of season list decisions because who they extended tells you there's some going to be hard cuts or trades that has to be made, especially with the draft picks you have.
It was a bit like Jai Menzies, 18 months ago when he got extended off the back of a couple games early in the season. It was just beggars belief.
Yeah. No, I'm right with you on that one. And look, just to mention Oscar Smart, look, we know he's probably more. I can't say who I was talking to, but I was talking to someone in the VFL program, and it was more just like a case of like, it's just so great for him now to be in the senior AFL system to train every day. Because you forget that the VFL guys, they have to work, they have to do other things, and so they said the value of him is his conditioning will improve out of sight, being in the AFL program, getting that kind of proper full-time training regime, getting the line coaches, so they really like his upside. They know that he was going to play VFL for quite a lot of the year, and that's okay. But they like the upside of what he may bring in the future. So he played that, I think about 2 weeks ago. He played a VFL game that was definitely his standout game that I'd seen him play. He had something like 20 disposals and a freakish goal with the old fend off. And it was really, really impressive because he had stints in the midfield. Actually played a little bit of the Hobbs role in some ways, that high forward going through the midfield sometimes, and he looks really, really impressive. So look, I like what they've done. Look, I guess just on another note, it's probably an easy one. We've discussed it a little bit, but I've got here. What's your optimism for what you've seen this year now for the next 2 or 3 years? Um, it, maybe it's a little bit redundant, the question, because we kind of started the show with it when we're talking about the injuries and how the kids have been doing. So, but I'm going to change things up a bit. How have you felt like the senior coach is doing?
Doing the best he can with what he's got, really. It's a tough scenario for him. I'm not really. He's been our coach a few times. I think he'd openly admit that too. But yeah, I think the team around him is really good. And I mentioned Ben Jacobs pretty early on. I'm really optimistic about what he does, and that's probably going to be my 2026 takeaway is that Archie Roberts, that you guys mentioned so many times, that it's hard to fathom that it's his second year, isn't it? Sometimes you look at him and go, he's been on the list for 5 years, hasn't he? Just the way he plays, it's just mature. And I think that's a great testament to the development team right now. And then, as Grant said, Nick Cox going back, the development hasn't been there. And that's kind of where his game's been stifled. I don't know if that gets rectified now, this new team. Maybe it's just his temperament, but I'm really confident draftees coming in are going to have some pretty solid expectations of what they need to do, and they've got a great team around them to make them better. And I think the prime example was Angus Clark. I mean, he battled so hard just to get himself drafted, and he's really flourishing at AFL level. And I really think it wouldn't be surprised me if he became one of the best of that crop, because he just seems to get the AFL footy so well. He kicked 3 goals on debut, went back. I really like what he's doing. But yeah, development team is just so great to see them finally get it all sorted out. And, we could see as soon as 2026 that this team can really be competitive with a young list.
And it'll be interesting too with the salary cap space for assistant coaches. Obviously, now having a bit more space, it'll be interesting to see. Look, Scott may more do a reward approach and sort of give the guys pay rises probably deserve. But it'll be interesting how we use that newfound cap space in that area and how we structure the club. But I think my optimism, and I to put the senior coach in this, is more the stability that I think every time I go to the club and I walk through it. We had very much the lucky privilege of interviewing Vozo in his office. But each time I do that, the interactions with players with him, with others with him, and just my optimism is probably around the stability. I think in the end, that's going to reap some rewards. There's going to be frustrations at the selection table and all that kind of stuff, and we're all going to have those debates. But still, in the end, if we want to be the Geelongs and if we want to be that kind of, it has to have some stability from president to CEO to operations managers. And I find even Rowan Conley talking about it, and he can be sometimes viewed as cynical as anyone, but he was noting on Bomber Banter like how surprised he was about how stable it was when he went into the club and talked to them all, and how incredible, how it really gave him a lot of comfort and made him kind of, I don't know if the words relax, but gave him some optimism about there's a real steadiness around. And look, as far as Brad Scott, look, the verdict's still out, no doubt, on coaching sides. I feel like I still don't know him yet on what, and even to a sense, the start of the year with so much uncontested footy, and then we're over so much handballing. And then I hear Gia after the Fremantle game, and we've just handballed, and he's saying, "Oh well, we're trying to get the guys to move the ball fast to give our forwards a chance." You're like, oh, well, that's is that personnel? Is that injuries? Because that's not happening obviously at all. So I don't feel yet, hand on heart, that I've seen an identified system of what Scott wants. And I will say in like 3 or 4 successive games where I've gone, okay, now I'm getting the rhythm of it. I feel like it's been a bit helter-skelter this year. Maybe that's a byproduct of guys going down left, right, and centre. But Jasper, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll turn it round to you guys, and I'm interested to
Don't
hear
do
this
that.
one. No, because I think you've summed it up really well. Do you think Brad Scott will be the next premiership coach of the Essendon Football Club? I'll go with you first, Scooter.
Oh, thanks. Um, uh,
Do you think he's in here for the long haul? And with this list in particular, if it makes it to a grand
yes,
final stage, he'll be the coach?
I think that's his intent.
Yeah.
And because I think that was very much clear in his job interview at the club,
Yeah.
that he knew he was going to go young. Um, uh, and I think that was even reinforced even more with Rosa. So I think from what I hear, and whether it's right or wrong, from what I hear, Scott gets along better with Rosa than the previous list manager, and they just have a better forward way of thinking. It was a little bit. I hear it was a bit isolated, and that's just I hear from very good people, and that's so I think having a unified approach moving forward, and I reckon Matt Rosa told him some truths at the end of last year, and you saw the Stringer, you saw the Heps, you saw the Kellys, you saw the Hindies. I could say Wiedemann, but that was going to happen. But you saw a change. So I think they knew they were going a step back a bit. Yes, I do think in his mind this is a long haul approach. He's obviously mentioned many years down the track quite a number of times that this is going to take a while to fundamentally change the club. So yes, whether I think he's going to be the next premiership coach, I can't say. Like I don't feel like I know more. I still don't know enough on field when they've been. I still feel like there's so many list changes. They're still going to happen. I know they turned around 20 guys. I still feel like there's another 10 guys that may. I feel like what side is actually going to be in 2 years, and it could be a whole lot of draft picks that are coming in. It could be Cabby Buick in 2 years, but but yeah. So I want to see. I just want to see a settled side of a side that Scott wants with the players he wants, and then see, okay, show me what system you want, because I just haven't seen it to date to be comfortable to be confident in saying he's our next premiership coach. I just can only say that in his mind, he wants to be the next premiership coach, no matter how long it takes.
Yep.
I got a real short answer to this one. He has to be. Genuinely, he has to be. Because what is it? That'll be what, 7 coaches in 9 years or whatever the hell it is. I reckon I would love to have been a fly on the wall for the coaching discussions and his presentations to the Essendon board. And then I can assure you he would have had more meetings with either CEO or the board as well, with regards to, you can't honestly expect me to play our normal game plan when I'm playing 19-year-old kids for their first game, right? So he would have had that discussion with the board and said, look, this year is just a complete write-off. We're going to play kids. We're going to learn who we've got, and we'll see you in 2026. But we can't afford to, in 2 or 3 years' time, change coaches again. We've got Brad Scott. He's in it for the long term. And come hook or by crook, he has to be the guy. Unless the rear end completely falls out of this club and we start losing by 100 points and stuff again, then we have to have, which is why he was extended also, because Tassie's coming in and we don't want them poaching him. But we have to have stability from the top down, and that includes the coach. He can coach. I'm a bit with Scotty. If we ever get to have him on the pod, hopefully, this is a subliminal message to the club. If we ever get him on, I'm going to ask him about some serious questions about what is with the handball just because of handball. It's like an addiction. They touch the ball and just want to handball it to the nearest person to them, or handball. I understand the handball can be very effective and it can free up players, and you want to run and you want to give the forwards a chance and stuff, but it ain't working. So there's elements of Brad Scott as a coach, not just his game plan, because you can't ask for that this year, but his ability as a coach, I think, and to get the message through to his players, like Andy McGrath and that sort of stuff, that isn't working at the moment or that hasn't clicked. So I think there are questions on him improving as a coach, but will he be our coach? Absolutely. There's no doubt that he'll be the coach for the next 10 years.
Damn, there you go. That's a long period.
I
Not
like it.
bad.
So look, just to wrap up, because we're going, it's been a long show. So thank you for everyone's patience, and thanks for Todd and Jasper for your extended time. I really, really appreciate coming on. Jasper, just last, I can't go without leaving obvious questions because you're obviously heavy into the draft. You do your Phantom drafts, and I noticed you did one recently. And sorry if I over debated a topic on Willem Duursma for you.
No, that was good. I like it. No, I love it.
It's funny enough, his last game actually gave me more comfort. I went, oh no, that's all right. But I've two-part question for you, mate. Can you walk us through how you think our NGAs are going? And two, what are your thoughts on draft or trade at the end of the year?
Hey, Toddy, me and you just will sit here, okay? We'll just
You guys
sit
just
and
take
listen
notes,
to
please.
listen to the great man.
I'll grade
Yes,
you
yes.
on your notes at the end
Nice.
of at the end of class.
I did pre-warn you of this. I'm also going to ask you a controversial question on Adam Swade.
Yes.
If someone bidded on him low, say in the 20s, does he actually fit what we want, or would you look to maybe not match the bid because of we've had that discussion about Hobbs and in Parish and like-minded smaller guys who can find the footy in the middle. Is there a thought process if he actually got bidded on early the way you go, actually, he may not fit our list?
Well, let's talk about the type of player he is first, Scooter. He's a 178-ish kind of 175, I think he's listed at, but I think he's more closer to 178 centimeter midfielder, inside midfielder, currently playing for Vic Metro as an on-baller right now. He's in that first rotation, and he's also playing for Calder and putting up really good performances. He got a taste of it in the Essendon VFL's setup as well a couple of weeks back. So he's got some comparisons to Dion Prestia, who's that smaller nuggety type. I think Jake Saligo was that kind of modern day kind of type of player where he has some tricks that make his height an advantage for him to duck out of tackles, to draw some high free kicks, to make the most of contested inside situations at his size. The question mark does come on the outside. He's an elite forward transition runner, and he loves to get forward and hit the scoreboard. He bites off kind of opportunities with his foot and has some dare with his legs to break lines. But is he that really damaging outside player? No, he's not. And in this draft, I think he's probably in that 25 to 40 kind of range right now, well and truly in the second round, probably a second night pick. So when you talk about a possibility of him being bid on at, say pick 25, it would be an interesting discussion because that means that we need to trade our future, our second rounders. We have two of them, St Kilda and Essendon, and we've got to make a decision on those two. And to accumulate points, we'll either need to trade back to match bids on them or trade up to not have them gobbled up by a bid in the mid-20s for a guy like Adam Swade. And right now, I would consider the conversation that Matt Rose is having would be very similar in terms of who can we trade up with and what are the opportunities for us to do that. Gold Coast will be a big one because they've got 2 first rounders and they've got 3 NGA kids they need to batch points on. Those second rounders are going to be really valuable because if you missed it, NGA Academy kind of rule changes coming into effect this year is it's more difficult to match bids because points are harder to come by. When you saw Levi Ashcroft get, his bid was matched with 7 picks in the 50s by the Lions. That's not going to be able to happen this year. So if Zeke Ulan goes in the top 5, Gold Coast is going to need points, and Essendon has points available to give them. And I think that is where Matt Rose has done well 12 months ago to prep us to have potentially 3 first-round picks and 2 NGA guys. So if a bid comes in the first round, maybe he's not the type of player that you want, Scooter. I would consider that unlikely right now, though.
Yeah. And look, it's important to note we are doing well when you look at the ladder and see Melbourne Saints and Essendon. As far as all our first and second round, obviously
we picked them well.
we picked them well, didn't we? Because your second round picks are definitely in the I know they're going to be much later on draft night, so everyone knows that, but they're going to be around the kind of like the 22, 23 mark. So that's a really good start. So that even helps Gold Coast even more, that you get your 2 second rounds are actually on the lower end. So I like the idea of trying to go for the 3 first rounders. But and just because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Swade's going to slide. I just think the size element, he may slide to more of a 35. That's just my gut feel. But I don't know the depth of the draft. A lot of people talk about Willem Dersma, and there's obviously the last name. Just quickly, if he's available, and you say we end up with pick 4, and at pick 4 he's available, are you going for it?
Yeah, I love him. He's my number 1 prospect right now. He's competitive. He's physical. He's one of the best athletes to come through the draft in many a year. He's about 193 centimeters, but this boundless athleticism to drive the legs out of contest, to use his leap. He's a former basketballer. He's got that beautiful vertical leap and springy kind of jump to take intercept marks as a halfback. And then hopefully we see the best of him as a midfielder going forward in the second half of the year. But right now, for Gippsland, he's probably the best pseudo key defender in the Coates League, I guess, because at 193 centimeters, he just peels off all of his opponents, reads the play beautifully, intercepts and kickstarts transition. I absolutely love what he could be at the next level. I think he's more that Will Day type of tall midfielder that can impact outside of the contest in transition where he's at his best.
Yeah.
I just want to see a little bit more from him to lock in that number 1 spot.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate the show. It's definitely thorough. So I hope everyone's appreciated.
Fans are going to love it.
Todd and Jasper, as always, huge friends of the show. And we got to catch up for drinks too one time.
Absolutely.
Side note.
Well, it was about 14 months ago we did our live show, and
Yeah,
we had a bloody good time that day, especially beating GWS. My lord, that was a long time
wasn't it
ago.
just that was like the perfect day, wasn't it?
Oh, it was probably the best game we've ever played. My God.
It was just like, the whole day, me, and then obviously having Rids and that as guests, and just the place packed, and it was just an awesome event and day. So, no, thank you guys. For those who don't know, you can listen to the flight plan. Is it mainly iTunes or Spotify? Where would they?
Available everywhere: Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We've got, I think, about 12 different platforms that we go out to, which is ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to obviously hear Jasper's incredible knowledge of footy and the beautiful, sexy tones of Todd Davey. So it's just fantastic to have you guys on the show, and we can't thank you enough. So that's it from us. Thank you, everyone. And we'll catch you soon. Grant, is there anything else you want to say?
No, mate. Thank you again. Thank you, boys, for coming on. We will, from a lunchtime catch-up podcast, I forgot my own podcast name, point of view, we'll be back on Patreon on Thursday with the team selection show, then the post-game show after that. So
after the bye, we will, yes.
After the bye, yeah, of course. We'll be having a little trip to Bali or something like that, just for the relaxation, and then we'll be back
for the vocal cords.
That's it, for some normal scheduled programming. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.
Catch up.
Appreciate it, guys.